Welcome everyone, my name is Blevin Robinson with West Coast Cajun Cuisine. In today's video, I thought I'd bring you my take on king cake. Welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. If this is your first time here and you're interested in making authentic Cajun cuisine, comfort food, and even a few desserts here and there, then do me a favor, go ahead and hit that subscription button, hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Now, king cake. King cake holds a special place in my heart because it only comes around at a certain time of year during carnival season in the southern hemisphere of the Gulf Coast. It's based out of the Louisiana area. It's leading up to Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday. Now, this year, carnival season started on January 6th, and it ends, I think, March 5th, which is Fat Tuesday there in that area, which they'll hold Mardi Gras on March 5th. Now, once carnival season starts, you'll start seeing in your local grocery store and your bakeries and things of that nature, you'll start seeing these king cakes show up. And if you want a king cake outside of carnival season or outside of the general area that celebrates Mardi Gras, you have to learn how to make it yourself. Now, I moved out here to California and I can't find a king cake out here to save my life. So, other than having one shipped out and who knows what shape it's going to be by the time it gets all the way out here, I just learned how to make one. So I want to pass that on to you. These things are delicious. And the way I do it, it's like a gigantic cinnamon roll. And you can pretty much fill these with anything. But in my case, I'm just going to fill it with some butter, brown sugar, cinnamon. It's to die for. So without any further ado, let's get to that recipe. For this, we're going to need 2 envelopes of active dry yeast, half a cup of granulated sugar, 1.5 sticks of unsalted butter, 1 cup of warm milk, 6 medium egg yolks, 4.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of salt, 1 teaspoon of nutmeg, 1 teaspoon of vegetable oil, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now for the frosting, we're going to need 1 stick of unsalted butter, 8 ounces of cream cheese, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 4 cups of powdered sugar, 1/2 cup each of green, yellow, and purple sugar crystals. I'm going to start off by adding my sugar and yeast to this mixing bowl. And then once I have that in there, I'm going to add the melted butter and warm milk. And once I get that into this bowl, I'm going to turn my mixer on low. And I want to mix this for about 2 to 3 minutes. Get this well incorporated with each other. And then I'm going to turn my mixer off and let it stand for 5 minutes or so. Turn my mixer back on, and then I'm going to start adding my egg yolks. And once I get the egg yolks in there, I'm going to let this mix on low for about 5 minutes or so. I want to get these egg yolks broken down and incorporated into this mixture. And then from there, I'm going to start adding my flour. And I'm going to add probably 1/4 to 1/2 of this flour. And then add the nutmeg and salt and vanilla extract. And then after that, I'm going to add the rest of the flour. And once I get all the flour in there, I'm going to crank up the mixer up just 1 more level and just let it mix until the dough starts to pull away from the bowl. Now here I can tell it still looks a little bit sticky and wet to me, so I'm going to add another 1/4 cup of flour to this. And once I have that added, same thing, we're just going to let it go until all the flour is incorporated and the dough is pulling away from the bowl. Now right here, it's pretty close to where I want it. So I'm going to lift this up and I'm going to start cleaning off the dough from the hook here. And then what I'm going to do from here is I have a cutting board that I spread some flour on, and I'm going to go ahead and transfer this dough to my cutting board. And once I get it on there, I'm going to just add a little bit of flour and knead it just about 3 or 4 times. I just want to keep this dough from being sticky. Later on, we're going to do the final touches to it, but for right now, we're just trying to keep it from being too sticky. And I have a bowl that I put that teaspoon of oil in, And I'm going to lay this dough in there, and then I'm going to flip it over because I want both sides of this dough greased. Then I'm going to lay a damp towel over the top. And I want this to sit in a place where it won't be too drafty and have a chance to dry out, because I'm going to let this rise for 2 hours. So my oven is off, and I just let it sit in there for 2 hours. And then from there, I'm going to move over to my dining table because it has a nice big workspace. And I'm going to flour it. And I'm going to take that dough out and just start kneading it. Make sure your hands and your table is well floured. And I'm going to do this for maybe, 8 to 10 times. I want it to get an elastic kind of consistency. And once I get to the point that I'm satisfied with, I'm going to try my best to form this into a rectangular loaf. Because in the end, we want this to be in a rectangle shape. So once I get to that point to where I'm satisfied with it, I'm going to take my rolling pin, flour it so that the dough doesn't stick to the rolling pin. And I'm going to try to roll this out, trying to keep that rectangle shape until my dough is about 1/4 of an inch thick. And as you can see, it's not perfect, but it's going to work. Now, I'm going to start on my filling. And my filling is a 1/2 stick of butter, 1.5 cups of brown sugar, and a tablespoon of cinnamon. And you can download the full recipe at westcoastcajun.com. Links will be below. But once I get the butter spread around, I want to leave about 1 inch all the way around the dough nice and dry. Then I'm going to add the sugar and cinnamon mixture. And then once I have that all spread out, it's time to roll this up. And I'm going to start on one end and just start with a small fold and work my way to the other end. And once I get that first fold in there, I'm going to start working back to the other end and rolling it. And using my fingers and my thumbs and just lightly pulling the dough away from the table. I want to make sure it doesn't stick. You don't want to rip your dough. Just take your time, make sure that roll is nice and tight, and just keep working it back and forth. And as you go, it starts to get a little bit easier, but the trick is just to take your time. So once you get to the end, go ahead and take your thumbs and make sure you press that seam up against the roll so that it sticks and doesn't come apart on you. And from here, once I get to the end, I'm going to grab a baking sheet, and I'm going to try to carefully transfer this roll onto this baking sheet. And what we want to do is just form a nice big oval shape, kind of like a giant oblong donut. And I had to work at it a little bit to get the final shape that I wanted, to get the size that I want. And then after I've done that, I'm going to take a towel and cover this for about 45 minutes to an hour because we want to let it rise again. And then after that time, I'm going to take a knife and I'll put some small shallow cuts into the top of the dough about every 2 inches, because when we start to bake this, it's going to double in size. And this is going to help from it busting open and just leaking all your wonderful filling everywhere. And it's going to give it some room to grow. And then I'm going to put it in the oven at 350 for about 20 minutes. And while that is baking, we're going to go ahead and move on to the frosting. I'm going to take my cream cheese and butter and put it into this mixing bowl that has a whisk attachment to it. And just turn it on to low. I'm just going to let this mix probably for about 5 minutes until that cream cheese and butter becomes well incorporated. And then I'm going to add my vanilla extract. And then from there, slowly start adding the powdered sugar. And once I get all the powdered sugar in there, I'm just going to let this mixer go. And it's going to go probably 5 minutes or so. And it was a little thick, so I ended up adding about 2 tablespoons of milk, and it came out to a nice frosting consistency, just what I was looking for. So if you have a issue with your frosting being a little thick, don't be afraid to add just a little bit of milk. So our timer is going off, and now we're going to pull this king cake out of the oven. And you'll notice it looks a little gnarly, and that's because we made the mistake of having our seam around the top, and we want our seam to be on the bottom on top of the cooking sheet. But we're going to start putting our frosting on here, and once we do that, you won't even tell that seam was up top like that. So just get your frosting, spread it around till you cover the whole top and sides of the cake here. And then I'm going to start sprinkling my sugar on it. And I'm going to start off with green, and then I'm going to go to yellow and then purple and a little pattern like that. And these are the Mardi Gras colors. I'm trying to keep with that carnival theme here, but you can use whatever colors and pattern you want. But once we start sprinkling the sugar around, we're just going to keep going around, and our end result should look something like this. And trust me, ladies and gentlemen, this is one heck of a dessert. Well, that wraps this one up, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for sticking around, and if you like what you just saw, do me a favor, and if you haven't already, hit that subscription button. Hit that notification bell so you'll know when the next video comes out. And I also want to take this time to mention that the website is live. It is up and running. You can go to it at westcoastcajun.com. I'll leave the link down in the description below. There you can catch more recipes. You can actually download the recipes if that'll make it easier for you, especially when you're out shopping or something. They'll be in a PDF form. There'll be the rest of the videos there so you can learn how to actually cook those certain dishes. There's merchandise on there if you want to go check it out, and we have everything from t-shirts to mugs and just all kinds of stuff on there. So that's just another way that you guys can help support the channel. So if you want to go check that out, I'd very much appreciate it. And next week we're going to have my take on Salisbury steak. It's basically just hamburger patty cooked and then smothered down in gravy, and it's very savory, and just talk about comfort food. Look, take a hamburger patty and some mashed potatoes and gravy, and just, oh my lord, look, just make sure you hit that notification bell because you're going to want to see that one. It's to die for. So until next week.